Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining the webinar today. If you don't mind, I'm going to give it just a few more minutes. We've got people joining I can see at the moment, so I'll just give it a few minutes before we start, but we will keep to time as we travel through. Thank you very much. Hi again, thanks for your patience, everybody. We're going to make a start. I can see people are still joining, but obviously we'll be going through some initial introductions and preamble. Thank you for joining us today. We really want to share with you some great information coming out of County Durham and Darlington up in the northeast with regards to what they're doing with our assurance dashboard. In terms of kind of general housekeeping, questions, if you've got any questions, just throw them in the questions box and we'll deal with them. I'll pause at the end of Craig's presentation to do that, and obviously then I'll pause at the end as well when I've kind of finished my piece towards the end, and we can take any questions from there. But it gives me great pleasure this morning, joined by Craig Robinson, Head of ICT from County Durham and Darlington. Hi Craig, do you want to say hello?
Yeah, very good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, you've introduced me, but Head of IT for CDDFT.
Apologies for stealing your thunder. Yeah, we've been working with Craig for quite some time now on the team up there, so you'll hear more from Craig in a second. But in terms of kind of what we wanted to cover, just a quick introduction. Some of you will probably know who we are in terms of what we do, but that's kind of what we do on a day-to-day basis. You probably saw on the banner on the previous slide, it's our 30th anniversary this year, so we've been supporting NHS organisations for that period of time across this kind of general area of operation on a day-to-day basis. We partner, we're going to talk today about one of our own products, but we partner with a range of organisations, some which on screen, you probably know all of them. Again, if you've got any information or you want information about those, then please come back to us. We're now sitting in a position where over the last 3 to 4 years, we've built up a very strong user base for our assurance dashboard, which is almost about 130 organisations, which is quite astounding really. But we also have another product which we use, which is a remote access solution, but I won't dwell on those. We just want to get into the meat of what it is. So I'm just going to pass control over to Craig. There you go, Craig, you should have that now.
Thanks very much. So, good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Craig Robinson, Head of ICT for County Durham and Darlington NHS Trust, and I just want to spend a little time describing our journey really with the ITHealth Assurance Dashboard. I'm just clicked on there, just waiting for my slide to appear. It didn't appear to move on. I'll try again. You might have to click it for me. Oh, there we go. There we go. Slight lag on the line there. I do apologise. So yeah, so I'd like to talk to you a little bit about our story and the history of what we how we ended up with the assurance dashboard. First of all, I'll tell you a little bit about the trust, but my mouse isn't working, Chris, so I think you might have to click for me.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you. So in terms of CDDFT, we're one of the largest combined healthcare providers in the UK. We've got 8,000 staff. We operate over 8 hospital sites and about 56 other sites that are not hospital sites. We've been a foundation trust since 2007, and we serve a population of around 650,000 people. And we have over 2 million patient contacts every year. In terms of health informatics, the next slide, we've got currently about 85 dedicated health informatics staff. We support over 60 systems. At the moment, we're in the process of deploying an electronic patient record, so that number of staff is actually over 120 at the moment in terms of the deployment of the EPR. But we're still supporting. We're doing about 57,000 calls to service desk in a year. We're running an estate of about 2,500 laptops, 4,500 desktops, and nearly 1,500 mobile devices. That number is going to increase significantly in October when we go live with our electronic patient record. We still handle around about 500,000 malware detections, so that's things that come in and pass through and are handled. I'm not saying that we're getting bombarded, but that's the kind of traffic that is coming through our estate at the moment. So in terms of striking a balance, on the next slide, in health informatics, we've been trying to find a balance between usability for the end users, but also maintaining the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the systems. And the balance, I suppose, is to make sure that the staff need to take an element of responsibility, but we've also got a responsibility as health informatics to protect them too in their day-to-day business and make sure that the systems are available, the infrastructure is protected, the data is protected, and the staff as well. So one of the hardest parts hardest thing we've had to do is to actually strike that balance. So in terms of our journey with ITHealth, pretty much where we were before ITHealth, so visibility was limited. We had lots of systems. We could only show the most up-to-date information that we had at the time. We often didn't have much of an audit trail. It was spread over multiple systems, so that information could be a previous scan, that could be days or weeks out of date. We would often find that the information we had was contradictory. We'd have different versions of the same information depending on where it was held and where it was last scanned. For those of you who deal with the CareCERT process, that was a completely manual process, so we had to rely on things like SCCM and other tools to scan for certain patterns of files, even registry keys. It was incredibly slow and wasn't terribly reliable. In terms of DSP Toolkit compliance, that was really time consuming. It was a painful annual exercise we come to dread every year because of the amount of time and effort and manpower that it consumed in producing the evidence and compliance. Even though we knew we complied with it, we still had to pull together all of the evidence. In terms of vulnerability management, we had no meaningful way of doing that. For example, if we knew that Office 2013 had a vulnerability, we could manage that. But if a specific component or a patch was required, we then had to start digging into certain DLL files and finding out which individual files were vulnerable and to what extent. We also had no real idea of what software was installed in our estate. So we could do scans with SCCM, but for example, if a supplier or a user plugs something in, a device, a laptop, a modality, because we use DHCP, theoretically, things could be on our network that we didn't know about, or certainly until it was too late. And eventually, we decided that we needed to write a business case and make that case to the board. The case itself was pretty compelling, and we actually got the funding relatively quickly for that. So the first things we started to see after purchase was that, to be perfectly honest, we really bought this and sold it on the back of CareCERT compliance. That was our main driver. We were struggling to keep up to date with compliance. We built our own custom module into our service desk tool, Ivanti, but we needed a lot of manual input and a lot of cross-checking. And at the time, we had a security team of one person. So that was our main driver, but we soon realized that there were a whole host of other benefits. So Windows update trends, what we were updating and when, how many desktops, how many servers were patched, or more importantly, how many were not patched. We have the Windows assurance. So what is our Windows 10 position? How many versions of each release do we have on how many computers? For example, at the moment, we've got a big program to remove 1909 Windows 10 from our estate and upgrade that to 21H2. I can now track on an up-to-date basis of how many devices we've got. So I can kind of keep the feet to the fire of the technical team and say, how many have you done today? How many have you managed to upgrade? So I can get that assurance instantly. And when I get asked how many have we removed, I can go on the dashboard and find out straight away. Toolkit compliance went from a folder full of Word files and a load of screenshots of evidence into a dashboard. I'll talk about more of that in a different slide. But vulnerability management, we had 5 different versions of Adobe, for example, with a risk factor of 10 on a score. We could take that risk factor down to 0 just by removing the old version of Adobe. That was something we couldn't have done without the dashboard. In terms of Active Directory trends, find out how many AD users we've got, how many have been created in the last 24 hours, in the last 7 days, how many login failures we're seeing, number of password changes as well. So if we start seeing spikes in that activity, that could give us it could be an early warning sign of something's amiss. It also helped us identify, weaknesses in policies and things. So where, we set a password policy that might have been too strict, we start seeing a lot of password account lockouts and things. So we can use it as a barometer for that kind of thing as well. In terms of the Cisco vulnerabilities, in the past our Cisco network was relatively untouched. We would put a switcher and access point in, and we wouldn't touch it again until it broke down or needed to be replaced. And so now we can see our entire Cisco estate easily, and as easy as we can with our Windows devices, just at a click. And you can even see the relationship between the switches, so you can see what's plugged into the switches as well, and which devices and VLAN configuration, and to that level of detail if you want it. And hardware discovery. That we can now reuse our assets, so we can decide which devices should be replaced first. We can find devices that might need attention. So, for example, failing hardware could be identified. Machines that are running a low amount of RAM, we can target those specifically. Unintentionally, this dashboard actually became a de facto replacement for our CMDB, because we found that the information was better, it was more detailed, and it was more reliable than the other sources. So we stopped using our CMDB in Ivanti, and everybody now jumps into ITHealth dashboard for the information. And of course, it started off as a tool for the IT security guys and a couple of other people in IT, but now it is the de facto go-to tool within the whole of health informatics for information. And in fact, our chief exec has actually expressed an interest in getting access to it, so she can see it close up. So it really is the go-to tool. If we can, I'll show you some practical uses. So, for example, we can see straight away what our Windows 10 estate is. Looking at the top picture there, you can see that when I took this snapshot, we had 5,880 Windows 10 1909 machines, and very little 250 21H2. So I just look on that now, and I can see those numbers changing in real time throughout the day as the estate is being upgraded. It also helps us, see more detailed reporting. So, for example, we can see what about the end of life of Windows 10. So I can look at that and say, you know what, I need to do my 1909s by the 10th of May. I've missed that deadline, but there's a reason for that, and that's in our Internet Explorer compliance. But, for example, I now know that 21H2 has got an end of life of the 11th of June 2024. I've got 736 days at the point that I took this screenshot. The reason the numbers are different is because I did them at different times, the screenshots, so that's why. You'll see that the numbers went down between the bottom graphic and the top for my Windows 1909 estate. But the real benefit of this as well is all of these links are they're all hyperlinks all the way through the system, so you can click on any part of these graphical displays and actually drill down. So I can look at that one 1903 instance that I've got somewhere on the estate. I can click on that and find out the specific information at a glance about that particular device as well. So, and that's common throughout the dashboard. So moving on to other practical uses. As I mentioned earlier, the toolkit submissions used to be an annual task, which everybody dreaded, and at the top there, what you would see is that we used to put all of our evidence for the toolkit into a SharePoint repository, and then we'd name it by the relevant assertion and which part of the assertion it related to. And that was really time consuming, and we had to update all that evidence each year. Now with the dashboard built in, we can see all of the assertions by version and the evidence that is required. Not only that, we have the supporting notes directly linkable within the dashboard. So that will take you to a part of the dashboard where that evidence can be viewed. So from there, you can either show your auditor the dashboard directly, or you could export it into a CSV or XML format, or even put it into a dedicated report to send to your auditors for your toolkit assurance. So take, for example, assertion 4.2.5. Our unnecessary user accounts removed or disabled. I can now click on a single link to show me how many user accounts have not been seen in over 90 days. From there, I can see, all of the users, their last login, their last password changes, and more importantly, if their accounts are actually disabled. So even though we've got good processes in password or in user disablement for leavers, it gives us that belt and braces, and if anything's fallen through the net, we can remediate that pretty much straight away. In terms of the CareCERT assurance, our original reason for buying the dashboard was actually the CareCERT compliance, because it automatically links the CareCERT number against your scanned estate and then gives you an instant report as to the risk and, more importantly, the exposure that you have. And in many cases, some critical CareCERTs for us, we could give assurance almost the same day and say, yeah, we're not impacted, we've closed it off as not affected, the job's done. So if you look at them at the top there, with the first two there, ISC related security advisory for bind, status is resolved, it's a low risk, and for us it's not an issue. Whereas if you look at the log4j one, we've still got a huge outstanding exposure to that because of a couple of clinical systems that can't patch that. So I still see a sea of red there. I can see that I've got exposure of 11,000 assets that are linked to that, or 11,800 files that need to be patched, but I can see exactly which ones they are, and then I can click on the individual CareCERT and get all the details of that as well. But it does allow me to prioritize our vulnerability management by removing the most risky ones first. So as you can see there with log4j, I can see that the Citrix ones for log4j are low risk, and I've got nothing outstanding. So as far as I'm concerned, that's resolved. But the one above, I've got a high risk, and I now need to manage that. But I can see that, and I can see the outstanding number come down. So when we remediate that clinical system and we issue the patch, that number will fall rapidly, and I'll go into an outstanding of 0, and I'll go into a completed or resolved state. From a senior management point of view, one of the really nice things about it is the detailed reporting and the monthly reporting. So I get 2 reports every month that come out of the dashboard. One is the executive summary, which gives a very high level report, which is perfect for the various committees that I report into. So in terms of the CRO and the DSP committee, I can give them the executive summary report. I send it as it is, and then I can give a talk through example of the status of the IT estate. In terms of the more detailed uses, the images on the right hand side go into. I do get a monthly report, which is a very detailed one as well, which shows me the trends. It shows me the current status of the whole estate. And I can use that for more detailed reporting where necessary. But the point is that I can show that to the executive as almost as is. My report is effectively written for me. So in terms of other practical uses, things that I never realized we would get the benefit of, but actually it makes our life a whole load easier on a day-to-day basis. So how many PCs have a single monitor? We had a requirement during COVID to do virtual consultations and have 2 monitors and a webcam on every clinical machine in outpatients. So I could use the dashboard to get me a list of all machines that didn't comply, and then I only needed to target. So I knew exactly how many additional monitors I needed to order during COVID in order to meet that minimum specification. Previously, I would have had to send someone round and do a count. In terms of our PC replacement program, we have a rolling program. Now I can target which ones to do first based on the age, but also based on device utilization. So one of the real nice things about this is you can see when devices are actively used on a device by device basis, on a per hour or a per day basis. So you can see that you've got a relatively new PC in an office that's used once a week, or you've got a workhorse PC that's really old, that's used every day. So we can now target those machines and replace them in a more strategic manner. And that does create some interesting conversations with people who say, no, I use my machine every day. And we say, well, I'm not sure you do. In terms of patch verification, that's mainly used for assurance. So I can say, yep, I've patched all those machines, not just for CareCERT, but actually ad hoc patches as well. So is that particular CVE out there? Yes, it is. And it's been, has the patch been applied? Yes, it has. And I can give assurance on that. In terms of last logged on user, we can track down where people are and when people last used PCs. That's quite often required for various HR or various investigations and audit requirements. In terms of license compliance, although it's not a license management tool in that sense, you can put in, you can pull out, for example, how many copies of VNC have I got on the network? Have I got any? How many copies of licensable software do I have? And if that count is higher than I should have, then I can take action against it. I can also input specific details about how many licenses we do have on the estate as well. So although, as I say, it's not a dedicated licensing management tool, it certainly gives you a very good level or understanding of your estate. And then we have the individual device security review for investigation. So that will show you the audit trail of who installed what, who last logged on, and you can drill down at an incredible level of detail on a per device basis. And so you can look at device history. So that's been really helpful for a number of HR cases when people have been working from home. And so we can just provide that information as is directly out of the dashboard. So that's a selection of the day-to-day uses that I didn't even realize that we would have. In terms of our phase 2, we identify that we've currently got a gap around IoT and medical devices. We can scan the network, we see these devices on our network, but what we don't get at the moment is granular detail on specific medical devices or IoT. So, we're very conscious of that. And, these devices are going to be in scope for Cyber Essentials Plus and the DSP Toolkit in the future. And typically, you can't aggressively scan IoT devices or medical devices because you can cause outages or cause issues with them. So what we're doing at the moment is we're trialing an add-on module to the ITHealth Assurance dashboard, which will give us a full detailed picture of our medical devices estate. So that works by effectively mirroring a port on the network and actually analyzing the traffic that it is that those devices are sending in and out, and then it produces a picture of what it's actually doing. So then we can look at what the medical device is, most importantly, give us the technical details. What is it talking to? Should it be talking to those things? And obviously then we're looking at life cycle support details. We can then have a discussion with our medical engineering colleagues about the support contract, and then we can put in place remediation. We can block it on the network if it shouldn't be talking, if it never has a requirement to talk to the outside world, why does it need to, that kind of thing. And what we found is that over recent years, the number of IoT devices, smart TVs, radio players, CCTV systems, various building sensors, they've exploded over recent years, and most of these things are IP capable now. And so we need a better way of doing that. So as I say, we're currently looking at our phase 2, and we're building a business case to build this add-on module into the system. So a couple of things that you do need to consider if you're looking at buying this solution, and one of the things that we possibly didn't think about in great detail, so it's kind of lessons learned really, but one is who's going to look after it and manage it, and that's your internal system manager type person, because whilst the tool is excellent, it gives you a huge amount of information. You need to make sure you've got standard processes in place, naming conventions for IP addresses, IP ranges are standardized, and making sure that that someone's looking after the system so that it isn't filled up with superfluous data, and actually your reports and your dashboards are are well maintained, because if you've got too much, if it's too busy, you're not going to get good information out. How do you stop that information overload? The amount of data that is in the system per device is colossal, but you can easily get drawn into that level of detail. So you need to find out, what you want to get out of it, what you're going to do with it, and actually make that information meaningful, because you could literally spend the whole day trawling around the system. And then prioritize what you want to use it for, nail down your dashboards and get it working for you. So for me, I've now got just one-click dashboard, so I can click on a dashboard and I see everything that I want to see, or that I would need to see at a glance. So when I get asked a question for zero assurance or for vulnerability management, I can click on one dashboard and I've got it all on one screen, everything that I might need to see. And then think about non-standard devices. So out of the box, you'll get basic information about non-standard PC devices, but you've got to provide credentials for those devices that need to be scanned. So you need to think about, you may have to do some mop-up on that. And as I say, when we originally put this in, the mop-up wasn't available. So the new module to us is going to be really valuable in terms of that extra level of discovery. And then the other key is getting good data in, you get good data out. So make sure that your VLAN structure and your network structure is put in properly, so that you identify where that IP range is. So if that IP range relates to that particular site, building, hospital, or whatever, make sure that the data that you put in is good, so that when your users are looking up IP addresses, they know which site and which locale it's in. Because if you put rubbish data in, you're not going to get the level of detail out of the system at the end. So there's just a few things that we've kind of learned some lessons along the way. And I guess that's really, in a nutshell, is our experience. We've had a really positive experience with the dashboard. We use it literally every day. Most people in IT use it all the time. And it was totally invaluable to us now. We couldn't really do without it. So that's it really. Anybody got any questions or want me to go into any more detail?
Thanks, Craig. I haven't had any questions come in just yet, but that doesn't mean there won't be any. So we'll obviously keep that open, and if any questions come from anybody, then we'll deal with them. Be probably at the end. So thanks for that. Really, really insightful. And kind of great to see how you're kind of using it on a day-to-day basis. And that's been over 3 years, hasn't it? You've been using it for 3 years now.
Yeah, we were a fairly early adopter actually. And as I say, selfishly, we only needed it really for the CareCERT. But as soon as we got it, we were like, wow, this is so much more than what we thought we were getting. So yeah, it's it would have ticked the box from the business case point of view for the CareCERT alone, because the amount of time we were spending on CareCERT management, I was going to have to employ a member of staff to deal with that, on its own, because the amount that we get through, and anybody that on this call that is seeing CareCERTs coming through, how often you have to respond and how quickly you have to respond, and that's the issue, especially for the urgent ones. You've got to acknowledge within 48 hours and remediate within 2 weeks quite often.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And there's other things I'll touch on in a second that are kind of causing, more and more kind of pressure to be applied to you as IT teams and governance teams, because NHSD as an example are asking for more and more information. Before I do that, I just wanted to kind of just touch on something that is emerging for us as an organisation. We're getting more and more involved in kind of the ICS level conversation, and this is just an example of kind of where Craig sits geographically. Darlington is kind of at the kind of southern end of that northeastern Cumbria piece, and I know you're all kind of sitting in different ICSs or emerging ICSs, but this is a good example of what we're finding now. In this current situation, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 organisations currently using the dashboard in this ICS in the northeast. We've got one POCing at the moment, and again that POC, who's interested, is free. We did it for Craig and the team. We run it for 30 days, then go 60 days, 90 days, give you those reports at the end, so you get a real good feel for how it would be used in your environment. It actually gives you a real good kind of sanity check of your estate as well.
Can I just say that that actual POC formed the basis of our business case. So we took the report and said, this is what you could have. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's a really good way. There's no obligation. Again, bear in mind what's happening here in a POC or a live environment is that the data is being pulled into a database. All that data currently exists on your network somewhere. So, and then we've got one here that's committed to kind of personalizing it, and then we've got a few that kind of are not. But when you look at that picture, where we do have kind of saturation within an ICS, we're now into conversations with those people that have been appointed as kind of CISO as to, well, who's got what, where are the gaps, how can we start to get a more of an ICS view, a regional view of kind of compliance, of assurance. Is there any commonality in terms of configuration and use? What are the KPIs that are in use? Is there some consistency that can come in? So this is becoming more and more of a picture for us as an organisation, and we continue on this journey to that. But that's an example of kind of one area where Craig kind of sits. I want to just use not all the remaining time, because I don't think it'll take half an hour, just to kind of do a quick demo of what Craig's been talking about. Yeah, we kind of know we've got a lot of customers, and we've got a lot of assets being kind of looked at and managed. And this journey that we're on now started 4 years ago. Couple of kind of key kind of conversations here. Mike Press at Nottinghamshire Hiss, still a user. Richard Wakefield over at Northern Care Alliance were kind of say, hey, we've got this problem. We can't see what's going on in our network. We can't get this holistic view. And then one of those guys shared this picture with us and said, look, this is what I deal with on a day-to-day basis. And I actually don't believe this picture has changed that much in terms of day-to-day use of systems, technology, and what people are doing in and out of those systems and how they interrelate. And then these are examples of, it was Mike Press, of what he got running across his network. And he said, look, we have all of these systems giving us a different view of the world. How do we get a common view? How do you understand the level of impact? What's the level of risk on our network? And that's the challenge that we took away kind of 4 years ago. And we then realized that there's from our own experiences, there's a lot more external influence that comes as well in terms of regulatory compliance. And we said, well, how do we bring all of that into play? And how do we put all of that into and alongside the day-to-day things around CareCERTs, CVEs, vulnerabilities, now CISA lists, all that kind of things, and give a view of where you are with patching, because that's all interrelated, what's going on with antivirus, ATP, etc., etc. How do we get that global view of your estate for you, and how do we support these initiatives, which are still valid today and probably more valid in some respects? And then more recently, as Craig kind of highlighted, what do we do about this emerging DSPT piece around things like medical devices? How do we help you address that? So you can see this has been a journey. It continues to be a journey for us. We have a development roadmap. It's very long. We are, on the cusp of a new release, which will address some of the points that Craig's already raised. And Craig and the team have been very helpful in terms of that, as have all our customers. And this really has become a solution now, which has been designed as a single dashboard, which enables you to look at your estate, look at the status of your estate, look at what's going on in your estate, and make decisions in a much more kind of educated way. As I said before, all the information exists on your network. This is kind of a pictorial representation. We use a product called Landsweeper to do the scanning, which is over here. That's scanning the assets. Predominantly scans without an agent, so there's no impact on those devices scanning. And there's a whole lot of capability around integration at the back end to bring in other intelligence to enrich that data. We then dump it into a database and then surface it out in those views that you want. And one of the points that Craig made, which was sometimes it can be a bit information overload, in the new release that's coming, we've simplified that. We're going to things like roles-based access. We're going to make it much easier to create. It's very, very simple view or a more complicated view, and much more information in terms of that global management of what we've got. And then what we're doing here is taking feeds from multiple agencies, bringing those in, overlaying that information to give you those views which are very specific to the market that we all kind of sit in and love. These are the key areas of what the technology is doing. Again, day by day, minute by minute basis, and I'm going to kind of cover some of these off in kind of the next 10 or 15 minutes. So, but yeah, just try and keep those in your mind. We are recording this, so we will be sending this out anyway, so I'm not expecting you to remember all of this from this session. We see it as two components here. We have the dynamic dashboard, which sits on your estate. It's gathering that data from those existing devices, whether they be PCs, servers, network devices, cameras, you name it, pull it all. If it's IP addressable, we can find it, we pull it in, and then we overlay that with all of that other information we just talked about, and then it gives you these views which we'll go on to. In addition to that, we have this what we call the supported and tailored solution. So the reports that Craig mentioned are reports that are generated by your dashboard. We then send them out to you on a monthly basis. They come out on the first working day of the month, and they're kind of seen in some regards as a kind of a third-party view. It's a snapshot of your estate, and there are two reports. There's a much more detailed report, which is kind of typically what we see on the screen here, and then there's this execution report, which is changes since last month. But again, both valuable. As Craig said, he uses these and takes these and shares them within the organization. Some people take snapshots of these and put them into their own localized reporting, which they developed. Some people take information directly from the dashboard and put them in, and all those things obviously work in that environment. But these are sent out. And then around all of that is what we call our support wrapper, which is where we will help you create new reports in the dashboard, go into more granular detail. I've got some examples of that coming up. To make sure that we take the pressure off your teams and you have exactly what you want locally. You can create your own reports if you want to, your own views, but we take that away, because again, we want you to be able to focus on what needs to be done rather than kind of, you know, creating new additional reports. So that's all in there. And this is typically what it will look like. It's kind of tab centric. There's lots of tabs across the top here. If you can see my mouse moving, I'll come into some of these. And really, this is about bringing information to bear in terms of what you want to know at your fingertips. Scanning processes can happen hourly, they can happen daily. You can set them to different scanning periods for different types of devices, and you can scan N+1 or N-1 devices. So example, we wouldn't propose to scan every IP phone, just scan one of each type. We won't propose to scan every AP, just scan one of each type. You probably can build up that picture. And this view here is what we call our Windows Assurance view. And it's kind of all the components which are important from that Windows estate environment, which is where the bulk of the devices are most likely to be. And in here, what we can see is that some of these labels are red. That means that needs some attention. I'll go into these in a second. Some are blue, which is for information, and some are grey, which means they're absolutely fine and they don't need any attention. But again, we're trying to bring out information in a very pictorial way, dynamically. So in this instance here with this desktop patcher, you can strike these through or reformat the pie charts, and you can click into those segments to make it easy to see. But this is dynamic, as I say, and we can go into this at any point. You can click through to get to the detail of those devices and then carry out the remediation. So I've used this phrase quite a lot now over the last 3 or 4 years. It's about getting the right information to take the right decisions at the right time and apply the right resource. And obviously everybody's busy, so the more information you can have, the better those decisions hopefully will be. So in this Windows Assurance tab, typically antivirus, again, it's agnostic. We're not worried about the systems. We're not needing to do APIs to those systems. This is all interrogation of the endpoint with that ageless scanning process I mentioned earlier. We've got ATP, and this is now getting further enhanced in the new release. We'll have more information coming from ATP. Encryption, from an example point of view, you can see we've got BitLocker and McAfee in here, but again, it's agnostic. Patching overview for desktops, patching overview in the center for servers, and then information in here in the center, which is quite useful, and people do use this to know, actually, have we got PCs that or servers that we can't apply the latest patch to? Having a conversation a couple of weeks ago with somebody who said that when went from, I've got the references now, but I think it was 1909 to 20H1. I think the step was huge. Quite a few devices wouldn't take that, and then we find out that Windows 11 has got to have a specific chip type. We've got reports in people's dashboards to say, where are those chip types? Do we need to replace any devices quickly? Again, Craig alluded to that in terms of that kind of global, much more global view of assets and what the replacement program might look like. So patching here for servers. And then over on the right-hand side here, we've got Windows OS and Service Pack overview, and then this Windows 10 build, which again came in more recently because we were being asked, because NHSD was saying you need to be within 10% of the latest build. So what have you got? What does your estate look like? What devices are running which builds? And again, really, that's been really helpful for people. And then down here, information about AD. We need to look into AD. We need to know, you need to know what users are doing, who's got 2 machines, whether that's on the network, when they change their passwords, all that kind of information, again, is all being pulled in, even down to things like everyone shares. So that's the general kind of feel of how things work. As I said earlier, it's dynamic, so I can click through. I can get through to a list of devices. I can now, from here, if I want to, I can remediate these. I can build a package, drop it onto the dashboard server and remediate from here. So again, very dynamic. We can then rescan those assets to find out whether they've actually taken that fix and to see where, to see where we are with that. So again, bear that in mind as we go through this. It is very dynamic in nature. We can even get right down to the asset level. And all this information is available. I'll come back to this at the end about what we can see, even down to things like warranty, knowing what that replacement program could look like for you. And that's becoming much more of interest to people as we've kind of gone down this journey. We can get right down to what security aspects are required on those machines. So what are the missing KBs? What outstanding CareCERT at the machine level? So engineering, from an engineering point of view, from a services point of view, going into a device and seeing all the things that are wrong with it, that means that they can then remediate those from there. Again, getting a much more rapid fix and getting those devices into a stable state and a current state as you want them. Craig mentioned quite articulately that one of the reasons why kind of Darlington bought the solution was for CareCERTs. And here's an example of one of the CareCERT views. There are multiple views. This is showing you CareCERTs kind of as they happen. So trend line over time, what's the current status with outstanding at the top here, and then what's the current status on a week-by-week basis. That was another new panel that was brought in by a customer in the Northwest. And then here's that CareCERT information. So let's think about what's going on just quickly. So a new CareCERT comes out. Let's assume it's a critical one. It comes out. It's sent to every NHS. Well, actually, every health and social care organisation now receives that. At that point, locally, the question is, do we have any of this equipment? How do we find it? What's going on? So if that's the current process that you've got, and you may have some very good streamlined processes, that's then pushed into maybe into workflow, into the service desk. How is it different for what we're doing with the dashboard? Well, straight away, we process that information from NHSD, goes into our management console, and then because your dashboard is will be polling, that then updates your dashboard through secure ports, and you get the new CareCERT comes into your dashboard. And we will then also send you an email out to nominated persons to say, this has now come out, this is the CareCERT information, this is the CVE, this is the remediation, and it's now in your dashboard. That happens within a matter of hours, generally speaking. It will then have one of three stati. It will either be non-found, which is blue. It will be found but resolved, or non-found and resolved, or it will be red with outstanding. So it's very quick, easy on the eye view. We can then look across from left to right, CareCERT number, description. You can click through into here, see the detail. You can also click out to the NHSD website. In here we're saying this one's non-found, resolvable, no manual checks are required, and when it was issued and what the risk is, and how many were found and now outstanding. You've then got this workflow piece here as well, which allows you to add notes into this to say what's happened, if you then want to add notation, who it's been given to, where it's gone. So that process has been streamlined. You know immediately when that CareCERT hits your dashboard, how deep the hole goes and what you need to do to remediate. However, alongside that, because there's no guarantee that every CVE or vulnerability is turned into a CareCERT, we've also got a software vulnerability view. So this is driven by global CVEs, and these are updated on a regular basis. And in here, we can see all of your software. There's also one for hardware, all the vulnerabilities that affect your software, whatever it may be. And we can see that in a different way. We can look at it by a list of software as it is here. We can see the vendor, the version, number of CVs, the risk score, and then the installs, and have you put it on your approved software list. And we can look at that via risk level, via software, vendor, or whether it's been approved, just to again make that navigation easy. So I'm hoping now you're building up a picture of actually the way in which we are kind of bringing out that information and managing that information and bringing it to bear. Again, we can click through into the actual CVE, see what the detail is behind it. We've also brought in over time, again, this is a journey, as I said earlier, that's been driven by our customers. A lot of our customers continue to say, could we have this, could we have this, could we have this? And here's a good example of that, end of support software. This is driven by Centre for Internet Security. We're bringing in all of the nominated software that's been announced that it's either going to end of software support or it's got a date for end of line support. And again, you can see software name, versions, what the product is, what the dates relevant are, how many are installed, and what its status is, and then a link out. Again, really powerful. We're stepping into cyber essentials territory now, as well as DSPT. So again, sitting side by side, vulnerabilities, CareCERTs, we have end of support software. This is Cisco. Your live version is a bit tighter than this, but this is what Craig mentioned in terms of Cisco devices. So now you've got a vulnerability status of all those Cisco devices, what CVs are affecting them, and what that risk level looks like. So again, we've kind of bringing this in terms of hardware. We continue to work on this. We've got a feed from Cisco. We're looking at other feeds and then looking at those general hardware vulnerabilities as well. But that's a good point of reference. And again, Craig mentioned the impact of DSPT. In here, what we're sharing with you here is what that looks like in terms of DSPT assertions that we have studied and have spoken to a lot of customers about where the dashboard can surface that information for you. So the top one's a good example, 1.6.2, the use of personal data, and what controls do you have in place? Well, straight away we know, or you would know, you've got encryption in place. That's one control. You may also say you've got DLP, which is part of your antivirus, which may be down here in 6.2.3. And again, you can view that, or you can export it out, save it alongside your DSP. So now you're saying, yes, we're supporting that, and we've now got the evidence of the click of a button. And that again, that kind of shortens that time of collation, especially this time of the year. So that's gone down and has been well received by customers. Just to show you, if you've got a small monitor, I apologize, to show you how deep this goes. This is one report that was created. We were asked if we could do a desktop risk overview report. And this is kind of a precursor, say, to this new version we've got coming shortly. And this was, how do we actually find out what are our most risky machines? If we were to ask that question of everybody on the call today, how would you find out those risky machines? Well, the first thing you do is probably look at what software they're running on. So older software is more likely to be more risky. So we can see if we take this top line here, it's a Windows 7 device. So we know it's not the latest patch level. It's got no encryption running on it. Its last known patch date was 2016. This is a problem. 200 critical vulnerabilities. It's got no AV, ATP missing components, and it's got 4 vulnerable software, high risk, 2 high CareCERTs, and it's not been seen for a long time. Now that machine might be in a cupboard somewhere. It might just not be being used, but you've got that visibility. You can now start to drill in and find out where they are. Because bear in mind, as Greg said, understanding where machines are, we can see what machines are connected to what switch. We can see what part of the network they're on. We know physically where those switches are, so you can actually get down to the point of finding out where those machines physically are located. And then we kind of get into other areas. As an example, what's the current status of Windows updates on desktops here, and on the right hand side servers with some nice trending information. This is color coded. This can be changed, but out the box, anything green is within 30 days, amber 30 to 90, red is over 90 days. Again, easy on the eye, easy to see. You can click through, you can get down to those devices, you can carry that remediation and then rescan. But again, if you are the person responsible for this piece, that's a good place to be looking. And again, more trending has come on over time. More and more trending comes in. More and more people are interested in trending over time. And again, some examples here: OS, vulnerability, etc. And these vary from dashboard to dashboard. It's fair to say that no two dashboards are the same now from a customer perspective, because tailoring happens and we tailor it very specifically to your local environment. Again, trending here, this is around Active Directory. I mentioned this earlier. Admin logons as an example. Users not seen last 60, 90 days, fail logon, fail domain admins, everyone shares. Just good examples of compliance information around what you've got. And then the last few slides really are all about those very specific views. So this one's computer discovery, a lot more detail here. I won't go into all of it, but a lot more detail about what's going on with the computers, equally as one for servers. We can then look at all the software that's installed. Again, Craig referenced this about looking at it from a software management point of view. It will find all that software by device, by environment, and you can manage that from there, and then back up to kind of where we started. So I'm hoping that's given you a good feel for what's in there. Again, just to reiterate, we're taking this information into the dashboard. It's all on-prem, agentless scanning. All the data exists already. We're just putting it into a much more manageable way for you. And again, this continues to develop as a solution. Few things just to kind of cover off. There's a whole load of integration. Workspace ONE, Intune as an example. We see more and more people pulling mobile devices in. schedule reports. You know, you can schedule reports to run on any of that information. You can download any of that information into the format of your choice. We've also got integration into other areas like SCCM as an example to kind of get that correlation going in there. So there's a lot more in there in terms of what you can look at. And I say it becomes very tailored once it gets deployed. Excuse me. So in terms of kind of the last kind of thoughts in terms of sharing with you, the best way to see this working is very much around that POC. It's free. Craig mentioned how powerful it was for them. We're happy to talk to you about that. We're happy to kind of drop those POCs, and I say there's no cost, no obligation, and it's easy to take out. It's just pulling data in from all the things that already exist. I see we have one question. 1 second. Yeah, that's a good question around other products that could be integrated around things like MDM solutions. There is work going on around other solutions. The one that's been used, has been mentioned, is Mobile Line. There is other work going on around those. I can't give you any definitives about them, but it is on the roadmap in terms of how we pull that data in. Mobile Line's probably, outside of the two I mentioned, is probably the next one that we see being used. Obviously, been a lot of transition within Tune recently, but yes, that is on the roadmap. I can't kind of say when that's likely to happen. So the session has been recorded. We will send emails out with links to that and to other information as well. And if you've got time as you leave the session today, please fill in the questionnaire for us. Just helps us to kind of deal with those. I think I've got one more question there. 1 second. So yeah, good question about hosting options. It's still only an on-prem solution. We are working towards the hosted environment. Landsweeper have just moved theirs into a hosted option, but there's a number of questions that we've got around that in terms of how that might work. So we've got a new release coming. The next kind of steps on that will be to how we enable that kind of cloud hosting approach. But yeah, that's definitely on our roadmap and definitely something we're thinking about. We needed to do the work on the new release to enable some of that as well, so we've kind of built that into there. Hopefully that's helpful. I can't see any more questions, but again, feel free to get back in contact with us directly with myself. Emails will come out from Emma, who's organised this event for us today. But I'd just like to finish by saying thank you to Craig for his time. Great presentation again. Thanks, Craig. And thank you to everybody for joining. So if you want any more information, please get back in contact and you can respond to the emails that will come out shortly. But thanks very much again, and great to see you all on today's webinar. Thank you. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.